Welcome to the Rimworld mod rundown. Today we're going to be taking a quick look at what you can expect to see from alpha books. For starters, you'll need to own the additional workshop content, vanilla expanded framework, and harmony. Whilst not required for this mod to work, it does have integrations with royalty, ideology, anomaly, and vanilla expanded cooking. We're going to start off the alpha mod series by covering the latest one, at the time of recording anyway, and talk about the wonderful world of books. These books are differentiated from the base game content through one major feature. All literature included with alpha books is single use, and will not be read automatically by colonists to fulfill their recreation need. As you'd expect from a change like this, the books come with some pretty significant upsides to justify their consumable nature. As well as the books themselves, you're also getting a new piece of furniture, a couple of new materials, and a quest to make building your own library just that bit easier. So let's start with the quest first, as it's the most likely thing to lead you into collecting more of these new items. The first thing to note is that the quest works independently from the storyteller, meaning that it won't count towards threats or opportunities given to you by the game as standard. When these quests pop, it generates a ruined library for you to visit on the world map. The rate of this quest popping is one of the few settings that the mod gives you access to, with you being able to increase or decrease the rate that the quests appear, or disable it entirely. The libraries aren't exactly light on their stockpile of reading material either, with multiple shelves that are brimming with books for you to take home. Unfortunately, like many loot sites on the world, you can't simply slip in and out unnoticed. Once you've breached the library to claim your spoils, a hostile raid will appear and challenge you for the haul. Usually it's nothing too crazy, with a decently geared colonist being able to quickly dispatch the problem.
Oh, David, my man, what's going on? Everything good?
This leaves you free to scoop up whatever you would like from the site. Just remember that looting an area like this is much quicker if you simply drag a claim order over the entire complex and then reform the caravan and check your items on the display there. You won't be able to take any of the ruined furniture with you, unfortunately, presumably because it'd fall apart faster than an IKEA shelving unit, but visiting the site will have given you a look at a new building that's available to you. The plinth is unlocked with complex furniture. It costs 30 stony material to build, and it stores a single book. Whilst this can contribute towards the reading bonus in a room, similarly to a bookcase, the biggest upside of this building is that it multiplies the beauty of the book stored within it by 10, meaning a legendary book is going to be providing a massive 80 bonus to beauty. This lets you squeeze even more functionality out of a high quality book, as whilst it won't be read 24/7, it's still going to be able to sit there providing a meaningful benefit to the immediate area. As these books can often have a pretty heavy impact on market value, especially if you've got a large collection of masterwork and legendary books at least, it's easier to justify them with this additional bonus. I'm currently using a very similar logic with the 2024 D&D books. I keep them near me to look at the pretty artwork. It makes it less painful when I remember the suggested retail price of them. That just leaves us with the books and the materials that a couple of them can generate. These new books won't appear in the reading policies tab, because as previously mentioned, colonists can't use these books autonomously. You need to issue a right-click command and have them consume the item to gain its boon. The first couple of books to mention aren't going to be much of a benefit. They're burned or ruined versions. Whilst, strangely, these still provide as much beauty as a standard book, they provide no additional benefit besides fulfilling recreation, with the book crumbling to dust once the reader is finished. These are currently the best options for plinths though, as they cost a mere $10 even at legendary quality, and they still provide a massive 80 bonus to beauty when left on display. Begin the countdown for a balance patch that removes the beauty value from these two types of books, I guess. Sarg, someone just gave you more work to do. We'll go through the books that are included without any official DLC first, then the DLC books, and finally the Cooking Expanded Edition. First up is the Adventuring Logs. Reading this book will either trigger a world location to spawn immediately, or offer you a quest that can spawn a world location once accepted. These include things like ancient complexes, bandit camps, prisoner camps, item stashes, or work sites. All pretty standard stuff. The biggest upside to these logs is that a higher quality means potentially more locations, so whilst a normal might only give you one role on the table of possibilities, a legendary log could generate 3 for you, with a much greater chance that one of these camps is actually of interest. Next is the Army Manual, which greatly favours ranged combat stats and provides 2 powerful buffs to the reader. Firstly, they gain limited uses of an ability called Sharpshooter Command. It works similarly to a shooting specialist ability that's included with Ideology, providing an AoE buff to colonists that stand near the caster. The buff itself is static, but the amount of charges gained will depend on the quality of the book. Those stood within the aura, but not the caster themselves, receive a +5 bonus to melee dodge, +5 shooting accuracy, and an 85% ranged cooldown factor. Not only that, the reader themselves also gets a further buff that improves ranged cooldown factor, shooting accuracy, aiming, more to miss, and even reduces incoming damage. The Book of Portents can be a risky dice to roll, as whilst the book does provide a nice mood buff that scales with quality, it also triggers a random astronomical event. This most likely sees a flash storm, a eclipse, a solar flare, a meteor crashing down from orbit, but maybe, just maybe, you get one of the more peaceful outcomes, like getting to watch an aurora.
Aurora Borealis! At this time of year, at this time of day, in this part of the country, localized entirely within your kitchen.
Yes.
Similar to the Army Manual, the Botanical Handbook grants a variable buff to the colonist that reads it, as well as a number of ability charges based on quality, with increases to plant work speed and harvest yields. Remember that if you aren't also using a mod like Unlimited Reborn, most of this is likely going to be wasted, as it'll be hard capped by vanilla stat rules. The Cornucopia skill gives you a 5x5 area to play with, plus a little extra bit on the Cardinals, that immediately grows all crops within it to maturity. Obviously this thing heavily leans towards crops with a lengthy grow time, like Heelroot or Devil Strand. The Chicken Book effect varies pretty wildly based on the quality that you find it, from spawning just a couple of eggs to a handful of chicks, all the way up to baby emus. If you've ever wanted to quickly flood your map with chooks and pivot your colony's diet towards causing high protein and egg farts, this is going to be ideal for you. Next, you've got the folder of Durathread techniques, which unlocks fairly unique crafting for the colonist that reads the book. Whilst the material does exist within the game, in terms of something you could spawn a full stack of, reading the book does not generate it or allow you to create the material in any way. What happens is that the colonist gains a health effect that causes anything crafted by them, using cloth as the material, to result in an item made from Durathread instead. An unfinished item being made this way will still read as cloth, which means if you're using a mod that lets everybody contribute to the same item, it's the crafter that gets the finishing touch that determines the material it's made from. The instruction manual works like a creative inspiration on demand, with the quality of the booklet determining how long the effect will last before it naturally expires. This bonus does stack with things like Production Specialist and Inspirations, potentially meaning even a normal quality result will come out as legendary. Just make sure that you don't read this book too early on if you're working on a large project that requires a lot of work, as you might find the bonus fades away before it can be procced, especially if the book was of a lower quality.
Yeah, that's one fine looking barbecue pit. Why doesn't mine look like that?
Reading a medical journal will provide you with a 3-day benefit, regardless of the quality. The effect varies depending on the quality though, with a normal book providing a very straightforward minor improvement to 10 speed and quality, as well as operation speed. A legendary journal increases these stats significantly more, as well as providing a bonus to surgery success chance too. For an interesting flip side, poor or awful quality books provide a higher bonus to tend and operation speed, at the cost of worse tend and surgery success offsets. So in extremely dire circumstances, you can read an awful book the day before a raid, and it just might allow your doctor to tend wounds fast enough to save someone when they get shot. However, these tended wounds are very likely to be painful, cause infections, result in a scar, or emit a strange ticking sound. Does anybody know where Bob's wristwatch went? Next is the Midas Tome, with the quality of this book impacting the duration of the buff. This buff is not consumed upon use, so ideally you want to make the most of it whilst it lasts and not save it for something big and important. This will change any building or crafted item, that's capable of doing so anyway, into being made of solid gold when finished. Meaning if you have a huge stockpile of wood, you can turn all of your furniture into gold in a very short space of time. Or simply build a vast amount of walls that can later be deconstructed into actual gold. If you don't want to have to babysit wall building and deconstruction duty, consider something like a nature shrine that will turn 300 wood into 1,500 gold for just 350 work. Look forward to your wealth graph turning into a roller coaster with this one. The Office Binder is a potentially huge buff for your socialites. The buff it grants always lasts for 3 days, with a separate debuff that sticks around for just a single day. The headache debuff lowers the pain shock threshold, meaning a colonist is going to be easier to down with a trivial injury or an ailment. The severity of this debuff drops off significantly with a higher quality book. The buff itself increases negotiation, arrest success, trade prices, and social impact, and as you would expect, the higher the quality, the bigger the buff. Provided the reader isn't scarred in any way or still recovering from an injury, the debuff can basically be ignored. This is another grouping of buffs that's going to be capped by vanilla limits, however. It's another reason to use Unlimited Reborn. You want to be careful before reading the political pamphlet. Just like a culture war YouTuber with a Naughty Dog trailer, all it does is try and incite needless drama. The quality of the item will determine the raid strength of the enemy that it summons, with Awful hovering around half strength and Legendary hitting 2 times. It's useful if you want to get your hands on some prisoners, some assorted raid loot, or long pork. You can also use this as a bit of a Hail Mary if there's another, potentially more dangerous threat on your map. Hopefully it causes your enemies to wipe each other out rather than just ganging up on you.
I thought I'd die fighting side by side with an elf.
What about side by side with a friend?
Ha! Gay!
Reading a psychology book is going to make you insufferable to your immediate social group for a short time, as you dispense unwanted life advice and badly worded insights that nobody asked for. The buff from this book will always last 3 days, with the quality determining how powerful the effects of it are. Lower qualities only grant offsets to mental break threshold. Middle qualities include some thought nullification to assist with negative offsets, and masterwork or legendary books provide a small percentage of base mood override and even block mental breaks. If someone has just suffered a serious loss in the colony, this is going to go a long way in stopping spiraling behaviour that they tend to exhibit. The restaurant guide is super straightforward. Reading it will grant you a bonus that increases the quality of any meals cooked. This allows you to churn out a large quantity of simple meals using only a single ingredient to fill your freezer with a vast array of fine meals, or to make your fine meals into lavish if you wanted to go all out. Lavish can't become gourmet though, because they need a condiment to base their buff on. The length of this effect is determined by the quality of the book, but even an awful or a poor quality book can significantly help with food production if you time it correctly, allowing you to significantly increase the mood and nutrition offset even if you only had rice in storage. Self-help books are always an interesting read, although if they worked as well as everybody hoped they did, we wouldn't actually need any more self-help books to be published. The amount of new releases every year leads me to believe this might be a bit of an exploitative market. Anyway, this grants a random inspiration when read, with the quality of the book determining the severity of the mood buff, or debuff if it was awful or poor, for the next 2 days. The survival guide is great. If you find yourself lost in the wilderness, it makes for a solid couple of hours of campfire fuel. Quality on this guide determines the length of the buff, from a mere 6 hours all the way up to 30 days. The offsets, however, are always the same and specific to the book itself. You'll want to check the name or information panel for this book before reading it to see which biome it's going to aid with. When on a tile that matches that biome, the reader is going to benefit from 20 degrees of additional heat and cold tolerance, a 20% move speed, global work speed, stealth, tame animal and immunity gain speed buff. But the hardest part of actually using this book is how frequently irrelevant the biomes are going to be to you, as they'll be half the world away from your home and not really of any relevance. The Tome of Fire grants a random offensive incendiary option to the colonist, with charges determined by the quality of the book. As these are damaging abilities, pacifists will not be able to make any use of them if you have one read the tome. There are 3 potential roles here: Fire Spew, Greater Fire Spew, and Fire Burst. Fire Spew works like the Imp's Xenotype ability. Greater Fire Spew is more akin to the Flame Up from Vanilla Weapons Expanded Heavy, and Fire Burst is similar to the Self-Explosion from Psycast Expanded, meaning you're extremely likely to set the user on fire if you activate it.
My boy, my sweet boy. Come on. Oh, Arthur. Thank you. Thank you.
It's good to see you, Mary.
The training manual works similarly to the survival guide, in that you need to look at the title of the book to know exactly what you're going to be getting in terms of a benefit. This applies a learning speed increase to that specified skill for 3 days, with a higher quality book providing a more impactful benefit. Normally, pairing this with something that's already a burning passion will cause a lot of experience to be wasted, as it will quickly hit the cap every day. But it can be extremely beneficial on something like medical, as it allows a single surgery on a captured radar to net over 20,000 experience. This will let you leapfrog the learned max and rapidly train up a competent doctor. It can also do bonkers things when paired alongside a skill trainer. Next up is the Treatise of Stainless Steel, which does the same thing for metal that Durathread did for cloth. Whilst the stat upgrade for both of these materials isn't exactly mind-blowing, they're permanent improvements to the construction and crafting capabilities of this colonist. Although it does have to be said that these books are going to be far more useful in the early game, as by the mid-game you're probably going to be using at least strong leather or devil strand for any cloth alternative, and in the case of steel, the armour you're going to be interested in, like flak or marine, isn't going to be pulling its quality from the metallic material that was used, and ranged weapon stats aren't going to be affected either. The Zoological Compendium is another book that will always provide a 3-day buff, with quality determining how strong the offsets granted are, with it enhancing tame and train chances, as well as gather speed, gather yield, hunting stealth, and animal bond chance. If you're looking to expand your ranch, or cull it, this will greatly assist with either task. Again, you probably want Unlimited Reborn enabled to make use of these stat increases, as many of them are hard capped and will be squashed by the time a colonist reaches even a moderately high skill in animals. From here on, we've got the DLC and the VE cooking book, starting with the Aberrant Grimoire, which appears if you own Anomaly. This is another skill book that can grant the reader a limited number of uses, based on its quality, from a random ability from the small pool that came in with Anomaly. In this case, you've got the weird and wonderful things that you'll have encountered from creep joiners or entities, so corrosive spray, unnatural healing, shape flesh, transmute steel, psychic slaughter, release dead life dust, metal blood injection, or void terror. Some of these are drastically more beneficial than others, so I hope you remembered to say the right words.
Klaatu! Marada!
Hermetic mysteries will appear if you own Ideology, which initially confused me because I glanced at it as hemogenic and thought it should be biotech, before reading it again and wondering what airtight seals have to do with books. Fortunately, this tome was written by a dumbass like myself, so what should relate to ancient philosophical or religious symbols explaining traditions and theology instead increases the amount of loot you get from hermetic crates. The higher quality the book, the longer the buff lasts, which gives you the chance to hit up a couple of ancient sites in succession and scavenge all of the goodies. The religious text, also from Ideology, does what the Hermetic book could have done if the writer didn't use the wrong meaning of the word, granting charges of convert based on the quality of the book, as well as strengthening the colonists' belief in their own ideology, lowering certainty loss, increasing passive ideologian spread chance, and buffing conversion power. Obviously going to be useful on wardens, but pairing this on your already potent moral guide will have the best impact on the convertibility in terms of power. With royalty installed, you'll see the Psycaster guide appear in your game. If you're using Psycast Expanded, this book appears to pull from the vanilla pool only. That means if you have a similar Psycast from one of the expanded trees, like grabbing Word of Trust from Archon, you'll have 2 versions of it on your bar, the vanilla version and the modded. As well as granting the colonist knowledge of the single listed Psycast, it also grants a 3-day buff with its strength determined by the quality of the book, increasing psychic sensitivity, heat max, heat recovery, and meditation focus gain. Whilst people without casting abilities can read this book, it will not grant them a Psylink to be able to utilise what they've learned, so no easy unlocking of everyone's psychic potential by simply having them read a book. Finally, from Vanilla Expanded Cooking, you have the Book of Condiments. Whilst the item description says the effect lasts forever, it's a similar sliding scale of duration based on the quality of the book, up to a 3-day maximum. This will grant any meal created by the colonist, whilst the effect is active, to benefit from the condiment listed in the book, making it extremely straightforward to stack condiment buffs across a lot of simple or even fine meals, especially powerful if you pair it with the restaurant guide. Just be aware that if you're using a do until X bill, the meals created whilst under this effect don't count towards it, as they're technically from a different foodstuff due to the nature of the condiment buff. You might end up with slightly more food stockpile than you originally planned if you leave a cook unattended with this buff.
We're firing! 76 beefs, 34 chickens, okay? 12 french fries, 12 mash, fucking now!
And that wraps it. For now anyway, as unlike other mods, the Alpha series usually sees updates added to the core, rather than expanding with extra submods or extensions, so chances are if you're watching this a few months after release, there's a new thing or two that's been added since time of recording. But at least we've got the baseline coverage down. If you'd like to see the current suggestion list for mod rundowns, it's available to view on my Patreon page. All the posts there are totally free to read and it's pinned at the very top. You can support me in producing content like this for just £1 a month. It gets your name in the credits for videos like this, and it helps me to stay alive. Thanks for watching, folks. If you have any mods you'd like to see a full breakdown for, or suggestions of mods you would like to see covered, feel free to leave them in the comments, I might get around to them. I'll be back again soon with another Rimworld mod rundown. Wherever you are in the world, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening. Take care.